All right, without further ado, Curt, you want to take it away?
Actually, this is going to be a little different than my other talk in that I don't really have a plant list together, but I can get one together of what I'm showing today. This is going to be a little different than the other one because I don't have any music or any landscape pictures. This is all flowers. And this is all flowers from hikes that I did during 2020, which is what I thought was a very good year as far as seeing wildflowers and getting good photographs. So that's what you're going to see a lot of flowers. So,
well, that sounds great. Would it help if I took notes so that at the end you know the order that you talked about the flowers?
Well, I have them in the slideshow, so
Okay.
I can print a list off of or create a list of the flowers easily.
Okay, no worries.
So I just haven't done it yet. So this was more of the original idea behind this for me was just going through my pictures for the year and picking out the best ones that I could find out of the 3,000 or 4,000 that I had. And then I thought I would share them with people because it seemed like we need something beautiful in our lives to think about at these times. And that was actually before the election. I think things have gotten a little better since. And so hopefully this will help people out. This is somewhat of a chronological walk through the summer, and I'll try and give you information on where I took the pictures, and particularly for people who are not from the Colorado Springs area. Some of this may not mean something, but I'll try and give you a little more information. These are all photographs that I took. The names I used are based on Acrofield, and I feel like I'm pretty confident about the names, but I'm open to discussion if someone comes up with has some questions. And I actually don't mind if people interrupt with verbal questions. When I did this one before, I felt like I was talking to myself for the hour. So it's nice to have a little bit of interaction. And so if at least Denise leaves her video on, I feel like I'm talking to someone. So with that, this first picture, I think it's obvious that it's a Colorado columbine. This one was taken at Lost Lake Trail, which is near the top of Cottonwood Pass, west of Buena Vista, and in the last day of June. The columbines were just starting to bloom at that time when I was there, and I think this is probably one of my best pictures of the year. So. Okay. One of the things when hiking and doing things during the COVID time, I tried to maintain my social distancing, and I thought that Manitou Springs which is where I live, had a good way of trying to keep it in mind of how far apart you should be when you're out hiking. And I personally like the hula hoop one the best. So. And every year seems to start with, for me, starts with past flowers, even though they aren't necessarily the first one that blooms every year. There were quite a few spring parsleys already out when I went and found these. These were taken at the Aiken Canyon Preserve, which is south of Colorado Springs. It's an area run by the Nature Conservancy. And shortly after you get to past flowers, you start to see the sand lilies. This one is from Red Rock Canyon Open Space, which is about 10 minutes from my home in Manitou. So I hike there a lot. And at the same time, you start to see the wavy leaf dandelions. And this one was I think was a new one for me. This is called anise spring parsley. We discussed this in one of our chapter meetings early in the season. This was taken in early May. And George Cameron said, well, check the smell. And if it smells like licorice or anise, then it's this anise spring parsley. And I went back out about 2 or 3 weeks later and found this again in a different spot. And sure enough, It is really a strong licorice flavor. This one was taken on Kineo Mountain, which is part of Cheyenne Mountain or Cheyenne Canyon, North Cheyenne Canyon Park in Colorado Springs. This whole hillside was covered with that and the rocks. This is a Hooker's Townsend Daisy from the Blodgett open space, taken in early May. Blodgett open space is in North Colorado Springs. The Canada Violet, this is from the Intamin Trail, which is contiguous to Red Rock Canyon open space. And there's one area near the trailhead off of Crystal Park Road where pretty much every year you can find Canada violets. Narrowleaf penstemon is one that's fairly common, and this is in Red Rock Canyon open space, again in early May. Drummond milkvetch, again from Red Rock Canyon. Sometimes these are hard to photograph because the leaves are, the flowers are not in the best shape. This was one that had really good flowers. Again, you know, you can tell my favorites because they'll appear more than once. Another past flower. This is from the Lovell Gulch, which is a little ways north of Woodland Park. A very nice area for flowers. I think on this hike, I counted somewhere around 700 past flowers in about 6 miles. Shortly after visiting Lovell Gulch, I went up to Spruce Mountain open space, which is in Douglas County, just north of Monument, Palmer Lake area. And the Blue-Eyed Mary was blooming up there. And just like Ackerfield says, it's found right next to the slender phlox. And there's also kinnikinick or kinnikinick blooming, and this is in the 19th of May. And this is also a good place to find the spring beauties. Yeah. Now we come back and we're back into Red Rock Canyon. This is towards the end of May. The copper mallow is blooming. I made a trip down to Tunnel Drive in Canyon City to look for claret cactuses. Unfortunately, on the 21st of May, we were a little bit late, and the only ones blooming were 30 or 40 feet up in the rocks. So I had to settle for a Scarlet Gara picture. Back in Red Rocks again, I made probably, I think my list said I was in Red Rocks about 60 times this summer taking pictures of wildflowers. So, but this is a false Solomon seal. There are a couple of areas that have this in abundance. A lot of American vetch. And another one of my favorites is a blue mist penstemon. I convinced my wife to go out to the paint mines with me in late May, thinking it would be a nice warm day. We got there, and not only were we very cold, but this bumblebee here was basically stuck there. I think he'd been there all night. He was not moving. It was very cold and windy and cloudy that morning. This is on the 2-groove milk vetch.
Paint mines is so cool.
Yeah, yeah, they have a lot of really interesting stuff there. Okay. Really nice example of wild onion. White penstemon, which is the only place I know that I found it. Really nice Indian paintbrush. And then one of the things that's very interesting, here's a yellow version of the Integra. And I found that 2 years in a row now at the paint mines. And they also have another paintbrush, the Downy Painted Cup. Back to Aiken Canyon, we have another penstemon, the secundiflorus. In talking with George Cameron, you look for the bearded staminodes, and that certainly looks bearded to me, so that makes it secundiflorus, and it's early in the season. So Aiken Canyon also has some good examples of the breadleaf sunflower. This is one of my prizes of the year. There's an area up by Divide, which is west of Woodland Park, west of Colorado Springs, and this is a moss gentian. Before seeing this one, I had seen some up on Pikes Peak, and then I think I saw one on Buffalo Peaks, and I called it moss gentian. Well, I started looking into this as to where it was located. The first thing that threw me was that it had 5 lobes rather than 4. I got to looking into it and found out, when you read Ackerfield a little more detail, that there are 2 gentians that are very similar. There's the moss gentian and the pygmy gentian. And I decided this was the moss gentian because it's blooming at a lower altitude, it's earlier in the season, and it's a much lighter color. The pygmy gentian, which is the one that blooms up on Pikes Peak in the higher elevations, tends to be a very dark blue and bloom a little bit later in the season. One interesting thing about this, when I was doing my research, I found this site through the Montana Wildlife Service that had some information on wildflowers, and the fellow was describing the Gentiana remonti, and he talked about how it had 4 lobes and it was all this color and all this stuff. And then I looked at his picture and realized he had a picture of a 5-lobe flower. So I think it's not that common, but it does occur. So one of my areas that I regularly go to is an area near the west side of Pikes Peak. It's North Catamount Creek near Raspberry Mountain, which is the access there is west of Woodland Park. And we go out there and we look for calypso orchids. And so we went out a normal time with a group that had gone before, and we found a few. Unfortunately, it snowed about 2 days beforehand, so there weren't as many. Instead of finding the 500 or 600 that we found the year before, we only found about 200, and they were not in terribly good shape because of the snow. But this is one that actually was looking pretty good. At the same time, we found some graceful buttercups up there, a snowball saxifrage with a dipteran pollinator. The thing that this picture doesn't show is that there's snow on the ground around this snowball saxifrage. A nice example of golden draba. This was a first for me, seeing a marsh violet, and I found some on one little creek. I spent 10 or 15 minutes trying to get a good picture of some flowers that were not the best, and then went about another 100 yards and came across probably 2 or 3 dozen of them that were beautiful flowers, very easy to get pictures of. So I took another 30 pictures to get this. There's also the Canadian lousewort out there starting to bloom, and wild iris. Oh, and then we also found some yellow violets. And more calypso orchids, or another calypso orchid. For me, it was a really good year for cactuses. Red Rock Canyon has a lot of these hedgehog cactuses. They're not quite as probably colorful as some of the ones you find at paint mines, but they have their brilliant green, yellow-green flowers. There were lots of them blooming, and they actually bloomed for quite a while. I didn't put a picture of the mountain ball cactus in there, but we do have a few of those in the Red Rock Canyon area. Up until this year, I'd only seen 2 of these pincushion cactuses, and I don't know whether it was I had not been able to see them or notice them, But this summer I saw pincushion cactuses everywhere and found a few of them in bloom. But the biggest sort of example of good cactuses was the prickly pears. This is back in Aiken Canyon again with the bright yellow, all yellow flowers. There were also some orange. And then back in Red Rocks and the Intamin Trail area near Colorado Springs and Manitou Springs, you had these brilliant yellow with red centers, complete orange with red centers, and then some pink, and a really nice pink one. I found probably a half a dozen pink prickly pears this summer. And still in Red Rock Canyon, we've got the OPT green thread with some pollinators. Looks like 3 different kinds, like a couple, like 3 different beetles probably. Actually 4. And that
Hey,
flower is
Curt.
probably 3/4 of an inch across. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. There are 2 comments whenever you're ready.
Go ahead.
When was the moss gentian blooming and where?
It
And
was, okay.
oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
The moss gentian was in the Women's Forest, which is a little bit north of Divide, which is west of Woodland Park. It was in a grassy area near a stream, and it was probably 2 inches high. Okay,
And then the other question I didn't quite get, but it's IBS on yellow violet suggests another species. No. But John, maybe you can speak up. I don't know what you're saying, LVS or IBS.
Leaves. He means leaves.
Leaves. Okay, sorry. Leaves on yellow violet suggest another species. Thoughts?
okay. I don't remember what this should be. Natalia.
Yeah, usually the yellow violet is Natalia. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's is someone saying that the leaves suggest another species?
That's what someone's saying. I'm just looking it up in Weber to see what it says in there.
Okay. Because that's the Natalia is the only yellow that I know of.
That's right. It is.
There are several white ones, but okay. Okay, we'll get back here.
I'll just write a comment if I see anything in Weber
Okay.
to note. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have Weber, so okay, so we were here. The one thing about the OPT that amazes me is that you look at it and it seems to be pretty nondescript, but then when you actually take a picture of it and blow it up, it's some really interesting patterns in the disc flowers. And I didn't realize this guy had 4 different species of insects on it. Okay. Some Lambert's local weed. A nice showy milkweed, Asclepias. There's one area within Red Rock Canyon where they used to quarry the rock, and there's probably 10 or 20 of these plants that bloom pretty much every year. This is a white local weed. I know it's blue purple, but I'm pretty sure it's white local weed from Lovell Gulch. And the one thing I couldn't really show you is that there were probably 6 to 8 different color combinations of the white local weed there. So I don't know whether it's hybridizing with a bunch of stuff or just has different colors in this particular location. The longstalk starwort from Lovell Gulch, which is again is a little bit north of Woodland Park. Woolly cinquefoil.
I have a comment on the loco weeds. My
Sure.
experience is that they do hybridize and produce different colors like that.
Yeah, and I think they do, but all of this really looks, when you, I didn't see any of the Lamberts around that area, but there were just many. There was white, there was the white flowers, there were the purple flowers, there were some reddish flowers, there were just a number of different color combinations. So I don't know whether it's stuff that is hybridized and blown in, but I certainly didn't see any of the Lamberts or any of the other local weeds around. So that's a conundrum. Okay, so back to cinquefoils. Actually, pretty nice light that morning on the cinquefoils when we got there. Spotted coral root. This is the only one I saw during the summer. Okay, this is from a Conops field trip to Pikes Peak. Doris Driscoll leads one every year. Hopefully we can keep her going to do that. This is the dwarf columbines. We were there a little early and they hadn't come out too much, but this plant happened to be out with some nice flowers. This is at Elk Park, which is at 11,500 feet. There were lots of the rock jasmine there, or some of the rock jasmine. There wasn't a lot of stuff out. Really nice gold flower, Tetranurius acaulis. An interesting mat of moss campion. Mountain dryad, again, was not, we were a little bit early, so things were not abundantly in bloom, but there were just a few of everything there. And this is an umber pussy toes with some dipterans pollinators. Okay, we're back to Colorado Springs. This is, we occasionally get these purple petals on the Mariposa lilies here in Colorado Springs. Most of them are white. We get some Pennsylvania cinquefoil. This again is towards the end of June. A spider milkweed. This particular one was growing right in the middle of the trail. It would have been really hard to miss it. Some nice harebells. And these particular ones are from the Intamin Iron Mountain Trail, which is part of the Intamin Trail in Manitou Springs. Okay. I went on a hike with some friends and we went over near Lake George, which is west of Colorado Springs, and up the Tarryall Road to a trail that goes into the South Platte River. It's called the Platte River Trail, amazingly. This is in the end of June, and the globe flowers were blooming there. And we've got some one-sided penstemon here without the bearded staminodes. They're a little later in the season, so I'm thinking that this is Virgatus rather than the Secundiflorus. Some nice Richardson's geraniums out there. Tufted primroses. And a little bit of the Yellowstone crop growing in the rocks. Okay. We went to a pseudo Conops field trip to Emerald Valley, which is off of Old Sage Road, a little west of Colorado Springs. Old Sage Road goes to Victor eventually. It was where they would take the stagecoaches and wagons to Victor for supplies. Emerald Valley is a really nice area for wildflowers. And this was on 26th of June. We had a really nice example of the Rocky Mountain blue-eyed grass. So Rocky Mountain 9 mark was blooming here. Nice black-eyed Susan. The Saucepal penstemon or penstemon lobber.
Hey, Curt,
Yes.
have they closed the road to motorized vehicles there in Emerald Valley, or is it still open to the ATVs?
They have a massive gate there.
Awesome. Yes.
And apparently George
Yellow
told me
lady
that,
slippers in there.
that they padlocked it and someone broke the lock.
Yeah.
So they came out and they put this metal cylinder over the lock. And then some guy decided he was going to shoot the lock off with his pistol. And unfortunately, I think took off a couple of fingers.
Whoa.
But yeah, they have closed it to motorized traffic. It's a little ways from the Emerald Valley Ranch area where the Broadmoor is. But there is a nice big gate. They built a walkway over for the hikers. And so it's really, I don't think that the lady slipper orchids are doing as well as they have been, partly because of the moisture, but there is some really interesting stuff there. And these are some of the examples of what was there when we were there this year. Had a nice wax flower, Richardson's geranium. Okay, this is one this is a dogwood, but this is 2 inches high. If you walked by it casually and didn't know what you were looking at, you would say, oh, that's a nice patch of strawberries. And then you'd have, George Cameron was the one who pointed this out to me. And it turns out this is it's a composite flower. So there's many flowers within this center here, not just one. So.
Wait, Curt, let's go back to that for 1 sec. I have 2 questions. So are these modified sepals on the out or bracts on the outside? If these are flowers?
I don't know. I don't know that for sure.
And then does this grow up to a woody form? Like, is this a little sapling or?
No, this is as tall as it gets, 2 inches.
Oh, okay. Wow, I never saw anything like that. Thank you.
Yeah, I haven't, yeah, I'd have to look and see what the description says about the things that look like petals, whether they're bracts or what they are. Anything else? Okay. Another one that was unusual that I've never seen before is the spurless columbine. And if you look here on the back, there are no spurs on this flower. And this is one, I looked in Ackerfield and she really doesn't talk about the spurless being a variety or anything. And she offers Daily Eye as a variety, but I didn't really, the discussion kind of went over my head. But in the Southwest Wildflowers, Southwest Colorado Wildflowers website, he does talk about this being a variety Daily Eye. And this was one that I did not see it on the way up, but in fact I was taking pictures of regular columbines just to the left of this, and just saw the color and didn't notice it. And one of the other people in the group noticed it, and I went back and was able to get pictures of it. So. And this is the jewel of the field trip, was seeing these lady slippers. They were not abundant this year. There were a number of them, but they were not in the. I think George said that he would see around 200 in looking at along the trail. I think there were probably 30 or 40 that we found. Okay, now this
Columbine and the lady slippers. What trail was this?
Emerald Valley. So Emerald Valley is west of Colorado Springs, off of the Old Stage Road, which runs into Gold Camp Road, which goes to Victor. So it's on the west side of Cheyenne Mountain, also. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. Thanks for asking. Okay, we're getting into late June, and my wife and I decided to go escape Colorado Springs for a few days and try and avoid other people. We went to a place called Rich Creek, which is south of Fairplay and just south of Weston Pass. So there were some cut-leaved anemones, both the white and the more or less red. The elderberries were starting to bloom. There were a number of bog orchids there, northern green bog orchids. And quite a few shooting stars in the riparian areas.
Did you say this was Bear Creek?
Rich Creek.
Rich Creek, sorry.
Sorry. And it's a national forest trail. And I was expecting not to see anybody there, and we got one of the last spots in the parking area, and there were people parking up the road, and there were more people than I expected there, because it's 2 hours away from, or an hour and a half away from Colorado Springs. So I didn't expect people to be there. But there are a couple of really nice riparian areas along the streams or along the trail where you can see the shooting stars and the bog orchids. And then the next day we went up to, this is back to Cottonwood Pass, Lost Lake Trail. Lost Lake Trail is about a mile long. A great variety of higher alpine wildflowers there. So a nice alp lily, a bit of bracted lousewort there, some sky pilot, Alpine avens was blooming. Subalpine Jacob's ladder. And pygmy bitterroots. Pygmy bitterroots, I found them on Independence Pass, a few. Every year I've gone up with Doris to Elk Park. We've looked for them and we found them a couple of times. Not very abundant. On the way back from Lost Lake, hiking the trail back, I had not noticed them on the way to Lost Lake. I came back, and everywhere I looked, there were pygmy bitterroots just lining about a half mile of the trail. And not only that, but there were blue violets everywhere. And there was also numerous Sebaldia plants growing there. Unfortunately, the pictures of Sebaldia didn't quite make the cut. And of course, there were columbines. This is another version of the title picture. There were just a few columbines blooming on the rock, the rock area that forms the outlet to the lake. And this just happened to be a really nice grouping. The next day, I did a hike to Ptarmigan Lake, which is a little lower down on the Cottonwood Pass Road from out of Buena Vista. But another high alpine area, lots of rosy paint, some rosy paintbrush there. A nice shrubby cinquefoil up against the rocks. Dotted saxifrage. Some old man of the mountain. And more pygmy bitterroots. I was impressed with the bright pink of these flowers, both here and at Lost Lake. Some alpine sandwort. Even some alpine lousewort. marsh marigolds, the little Perry's primrose. There was one area in a stream where they had 4 or 5 plants of the Perry's, the primrose. Okay, about later in July, the middle of July, my wife and I went to spend some time. And one of the hikes we like is right in the town of Crested Butte called the Woods. And they have the best sulfur flower plants there that I think I've ever seen. They had a few green gentians growing there. Some Perry's harebell. Yarrow. And a really nice Mariposa lily. And some wild rose. And now we're at the Three Lakes Trail, which is southwest of Crested Butte. So we had some Fendler sandwort there. Pictures. Casis cordalis. Some of you may be familiar with the golden cordalis, or corydalus, that's very low. This plant is 3 to 4 feet high with these tall flower bunches on the top, and can be very, in one of the other trails that we'll talk about, Scarf Ridge, a year ago, it was abundant there where you saw just many of these flower heads sticking up. But this again was at the Three Lakes Trail. Three Lakes again is a tall cinquefoil, I think one of the few white ones. And this is Monkshood with Dollar Lake in the background, one of the Three Lakes. The Montane coneflower. It's the first time I'd ever seen this. And cornhusk lily. I think I found the plant that I took this picture of is there was a lot of cornhusk lily out in the plants. You could see a lot of them, but this was the only one I found that was in bloom. We found one plant of western red columbines.
Hey, Curt,
Yes,
can I stop you for a second?
yes.
So Kelly asks a question, but before I tell it, I just want to say, Kelly, like if you're doing research on this species, please contact me because the iNaturalist working group is trying to figure out what species like Colorado researchers are working on, and I can explain that later. But Kelly asks, where was the spurless columbine? We recently published a research article on variety Dahlia in Aquilegia.
Okay, the spurless columbine was in Emerald Valley, which is west of Colorado Springs off of the old stage road.
And Kelly, if you can turn on your speaker and respond, that'd be awesome. Kelly doesn't have a microphone, Curt, so you can keep going.
If you need more detailed information about where the pictures were taken, I can look up the location on the picture. So if you need a GPS coordinates or something like that, so let me know. Okay, so during the hike on the Three Lakes Trail, it rained on us a couple of times. And I know this isn't a wildflower, but I was just struck by the fact that here's a water droplet from the rainstorm. And if you look through it, you can see the leaves coming through at the bottom. And there were just hundreds of these in the lupins. And this was, I found this one and took the picture during when we were taking a lunch break. So. Okay, after the Three Lakes Trail, we went over and did the Scarp Ridge, which is another hike out of Crested Butte, and found the fairy trumpet or scarlet gilia. I like fairy trumpet because it makes as soon as I say that I can see the flowers in my mind. Some good, nice yellow paintbrush. A very interesting Whipple's penstemon. Normally, what I have seen, the flowers are either a deep dark purple or they're kind of a cream color. And this one looks like couldn't make up its mind whether it was going to be purple or white. So it did a little bit of both. Okay. The next day we went to Rustler's Gulch, which is north of Crested Butte, a trail north of Crested Butte, in the orange agosaurus, some scarlet paintbrush, beautiful cinquefoil, larkspur, another columbine, and then the last day we were there, we went to Brush Creek, which is east of Crested Butte. It's more of a kind of a meadow area, hillside area that has a lot of flowers, and this a lot of the curly-headed goldenweed was blooming there. And a nice blue set of blue flax flowers, mule's ears, and tiny trumpets. This one I have seen just a couple of times in small numbers, and there were many plants on Brush Creek and also at the woods in Crested Butte. So it was very common this year. Those flowers are about a quarter of an inch across. The pale agosaurus, cow parsnip close up, towering lousewort. This plant was probably 3 feet high. Aspen sunflower. Now we're back in Colorado Springs. I went with Maggie to do a Jimmy Camp Creek Park bio blitz. And this was a prickly poppy that we saw there. And this was the 19th of July. One of the things I've done several years with Doris is go to Buffalo Creek, which is in the North Cheyenne Canyon Park in Colorado Springs, and look for wood lilies. And since I didn't make her field trip, I did it on my own. And this was one of the ones I found on the 23rd of July up Buffalo Creek. And that's on the way to, if any of you hike that area, it's on the way to St. Mary's Falls. Okay. Back in Red Rock Canyon open space, this is a little bit out of order, but we're back in early July with the prairie coneflower. In Red Rock Canyon, there are many different colors from the yellow, solid yellow, to this sort of brown yellow, reddish brown yellow. A lot of variety within that open space for the coneflower. Some purple prairie clover in Red Rock Canyon. This is called taper leaf. This is another Red Rock Canyon flower in Red Rock Canyon open space. The plant that this was on was probably 24 to 30 inches tall and probably another 30 to 40 inches across. It was a big plant with just these little flowers. A common sunflower. Had some really good examples in Red Rocks this year. Unfortunately, pardon?
I just wondered where the pericomb was growing, what kind of habitat?
Where what was growing?
The pericomb, was it taper leaf?
It was growing in rocky, kind of open soil. It was in off the White Acres Trail in Red Rock Canyon open space. It was kind of in the debris from the trail making about 2 or 3 years ago. So there's not, I would say the soil is not really very good. It's pretty rocky and open. So. But I would say rocky as opposed to sandy. So.
Thank you.
Okay. The good examples of the sunflower, the unfortunate thing about these is they were growing on the dirt that has been used to cover an old landfill that's in Red Rock Canyon open space, but they were very happy there. Okay. Went back to Lovell Gulch. This is the 29th of September. There's a nice riparian area there, and late in July, usually you get quite a number of riparian species. So we have the star gentian, white monkshood, and all I have seen there is white monkshood. I've never seen I have not seen the purple in that particular area. In Red Rock Canyon and Garden of the Gods here in Colorado Springs, I found the plains milkweed. It's very similar to the horsetail milkweed, but the leaves are more densely crowded and the plants are low. So these are about a foot tall, and you can see how closely packed the flowers are. The horsetail milkweed looks pretty much a lot in similar shape, but the flower segments the leaves are much more separated, and the plants are 18 inches to 24 inches high. This is my favorite Red Rock Canyon wildflower next to the past flower. This is the Birdbill Dayflower. This was a very, very good year for them. The normal areas where I found them in the previous years were kind of the same numbers, but this year I found Birdbill Dayflowers in 4 new places, and they were more abundant everywhere than they had been in previous years. So I don't know whether it was just the moisture was just right for them this year or what caused that, but there were a lot of them out or blooming. And they bloom around the 1st of August. This was the 5th of August. The Gaillardia blanket flower. Again, this is the 9th of August in Red Rock Canyon. I try and do a hike every year on the west side of Pikes Peak off of the Devil's Playground Trail. And there are always a lot of white gentians this was the 10th of August. And this year there were quite a few of them. In previous years, they've been so thick that it was hard to walk without stepping on them. The James Telesonic tucked into some rocks up in that same area. Okay, now we're back to Red Rock Canyon, 11th of August. This is the common vervain, one of the 2 introduced species that you'll see in this slideshow. Those flowers are less than 1/4 of an inch across, quite small. And this is a low plant, not quite a match, but it is a low growing plant. The fragrance, snakeroot, agaritina. There seems to be quite a bit of that along the Intamin Trail here in Colorado Springs. This is the 12th of August. We do get a lot of 4 o'clocks within the Red Rock Canyon open space. This was the 15th of August, and the heartleaf 4 o'clocks were blooming. They lasted about a week, and then I think it got too hot and dry. After that, all the plants I saw were just dry or were dried up and not blooming. And there were also some narrowleaf 4 o'clocks blooming. And we do get the hairy 4 o'clock, or do see the hairy 4 o'clock in Red Rock Canyon. Again, this is another one that I really like, the Rocky Mountain sage. The plants normally don't line up quite this way to make such a good photograph, but this one was really nice. This was the 15th of August. And those flowers are about less than 1/2 inch long. Gay feather, again, 16th of August. Rocky Mountain bee plant. There was one area where there were about 3 or 4 of these plants growing in Red Rock Canyon. Showy goldeneye with a few pollinators. The other introduced plant, the common purslane, which is a low growing plant. The flower is probably 1/4 inch crossed, almost looks like a succulent. They're found often in Red Rock Canyon, but they don't, some years they do not bloom or grow at all, but this year there are quite a few of them there. On the 21st of August, back in Red Rock Canyon, this was a nice cut leaf evening primrose. That flower is about 1.5 inches across. A nice curly cup gumweed with the Colorado plain soldier beetles on them. A smooth blue aster, Symphyotrinchum lady. This is yellow owl's clover from the Catamount Ranch open space, which is west of Woodland Park and south of Highway 24. Really nice, couple of really nice hiking trails there. And then this is from the west side of Pike, a trail on the west side of Pikes Peak called the Putney Gulch Trail, and it's also the Ring the Peak Trail. These flowers were in Horsethief Park. And the one access to the Horsethief Park is from Highway 67 on the way to Cripple Creek. And this was the 26th of August. And rose gentians on the same hike. Okay, this is my last flower picture. This is actually from the 10th of June. It's a fritillary on a western wallflower. And the reason that I chose to end with this is because I have a younger daughter who is turning out to be a very good artist. And she decided to send me a birthday card with her abstract interpretation of this picture in torn paper art. And so that's what she did. And that is the end, folks.